It's the 28th of July, and this is your News Bite brought to you by eNCA.com. I'm Marcel Gordon, and in your news today, the Eastern Cape and KZN bracing for bad weather. Andrea Johnson quizzed over IDAC's probe into a crime intelligence officer, and Banyana stumble in their WAFCON opener. Severe weather warnings have been put in place for Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. Areas between Kekana City and Port Edward are on an orange level 6 warning for disruptive rainfall. They're expecting roads, bridges and settlements to be flooded, and even snowfall has been forecast over the northeastern high-lying areas of the province. Meanwhile, KZN is under yellow level 4 and 2 warnings for disruptive rainfall with localized flooding expected in parts of the province. While motorists in the Eastern Cape have already been urged to exercise extreme caution in these adverse conditions. Just this morning, 6 people died in a head-on collision on the N2 near Mooiplaas, just outside Kekana City, with one of the vehicles catching fire after the crash. Former IDAC boss Andrea Johnson's Madlanga Commission grilling continues. On Tuesday, she faced intense questioning over her handling of Crime Intelligence Officer Lieutenant General Peter Jacobs. Johnson had a difficult time trying to convince evidence leaders why promotions at the Political Killings Task Team were investigated.
You single him out and you know that he has refused to return to crime intelligence, even though Mr. Adams doesn't say that in his affidavit. He doesn't mention him at all, let alone that he has refused to return to crime intelligence. And the next paragraph in 5. Where does that come from?
Lieutenant General Jacobs at the time was the head of crime intelligence.
Yes.
So what this sought to determine was what was the reason for him not going back, which necessitated the appointment of a different head.
Mr. Adams doesn't say anything about him. He doesn't say anything. I'm assuming you don't go on a frolic of your own. You don't decide, I happen to know, which obviously your investigators knew something about it. You obviously knew something about it. You wouldn't have signed off if you didn't know anything about it. You didn't know about it from Mr. Adams' affidavit. It's very specific. You're not asking what happened to Lieutenant Jacobs, which I would still ask you. Why did you think something happened to him? Here, you know it's very clear. You know that he has refused to return to crime intelligence. Where do you get that from?
A governance expert, Professor Alex van den Heever, says there's an urgent need for stronger oversight in the appointment processes of public institutions.
And if that is how our public institutions are being used, that is incredibly dangerous. And it goes right back to how state capture was engineered in South Africa, replacing Tomoyani and SARS. There was a targeted attack on the individual. You begin with suspensions, accusations, and the people basically walk. Then other people come in and they take over these institutions. So you have to insulate them, and so that in fact that kind of strategy can't succeed. And that becomes part of the insulation. That, I'm afraid, can only be done with proper legislation. We can have an interim approach now where the president attempts to build trust with the public by doing something very transparent that creates an independent panel and review process and vetting process that can be trusted, and that he doesn't end up operating with exclusive discretion to make the appointments. And the appointment of Matibi goes into that because he just appointed, exercising his discretion. The panel was arbitrarily selected and he ignored that panel. That's not the process that we should have, not for these institutions.
Speaking of Andy Mothibi, the National Director of Public Prosecutions has ordered the withdrawal of charges against Crime Intelligence Head Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo and other officers. The decision follows representations the group made and an IDAC memorandum. The trial within the trial of alleged crime kingpin Vusimusi Matlala and his co-accused continues. State witness Captain Pimi Sekobela continued giving testimony. He's one of the officers who arrested alleged hitman Musa Kekana in April of 2024. This is in connection with the murder of Vereniging engineer Armand Swart. Kekana is also linked to assassination attempts allegedly ordered by Matlala. Let's listen to some of the questioning with the help of the court translator.
So, you mentioned now that no magistrate in South Africa would have refused your warrant if you applied for it. Why do you say that?
With the positive information that I had in hand.
The statement sa Shepherd atorego eNCA o feeling lookout ya yona a shika e bona it's in mo addressing it.
And the information from Shepherd saying that the description of the vehicle that you gave to us is in front of me, I see it.
That you base your belief on. You base your belief on that.
That is correct. And I was also going to add with the clips of the footages that I received from the main scene in Vereeniging.
South Africa and Nigeria have agreed to lower tensions and strengthen cooperation following recent diplomatic engagements in Abuja. International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola met with Nigerian President Bola Tinubu to discuss migration, cross-border crime and bilateral relations. Here's DIRCO spokesperson Crispin Phiri speaking about how the two countries agreed to move forward to improve communication and counter misinformation.
What we agreed is that we do need to de-escalate the public rhetoric that has been inflammatory in recent days, and we need to find a way of addressing these issues in a manner that is mutually acceptable. One of the solutions immediately was the fact that during our binational commission, which is the highest level of decision-making body between two countries, we had agreed to sign an early warning mechanism between the two countries to ensure that where we see an issue that would affect both countries, we're able to flag this immediately and address it at a bilateral level.
Yeah.
We also addressed some of the, I want to say, not misinformation, but a misunderstanding of our laws that we've seen, even in the Nigerian media fraternity. So, for example, as we were in Abuja, we saw reports on a publication called Arise News, where one of the journalists was saying, South Africa doesn't allow Nigerians to leave the country. Even if you want to leave at the airport, they arrest you on the spot and take you to Lindela, and then the acting high commissioner here doesn't have access to individuals who are currently in Lindela. And we clarified that, one, you are most welcome to leave the country, and if you are found to have violated the immigration laws at the point at which you are leaving, you get put onto what is called a V list in South Africa, which means you then become persona non grata, but that doesn't inhibit you from leaving the country. What would prevent you from leaving the country is if you are wanted by law enforcement agencies.
Something is stinky in Jozi, and it's not just the politics. Weeks after Pikitup promised to clear the city's refuse collection backlog, many communities say little has changed. Residents in parts of Sandton and Randburg are still living with overflowing bins, foul smells, and just growing health concerns. eNCA's Nabila Sheikh spoke to the ward councillor there and residents, although Pikitup were yet to respond to her questions.
Pikitup previously blamed the backlog on disruptions caused by casual workers contracted to service providers who blocked depots while demanding permanent employment. The utility assured residents the backlog would be cleared, but weeks later, many communities say that promise has yet to be fulfilled.
The loads behind me have not been collected since Monday last week, all right? The biggest impact is I've got 390 apartments, flats, complexes within my ward. Some of those are over 1,000 units. And waste not being collected has now become an environmental issue and residents are upset. But there's no official communication from anyone. And actually this falls on our mayor. The mayor, who is the master and chief of the city in theory, and the city manager should be taking the councillors and the residents in confidence to what their plans are going forward. This has been going on actually for a lot longer, starting with the Randburg depot.
Residents in affected communities say they've had enough.
But it's really unjust, I believe, and incompetent and negligent if you have to pay for services not being delivered. Come on, look at the place. Who's going to be held responsible for disease vectors that spread from this?
It's not nice because if you can here even now, the smell is so bad. It is so bad, and you can see now people are starting to dump their dustbins in the corners now.
In other news, we're keeping an eye on. National Treasury says it will begin releasing the remaining withheld municipal funding from the end of July. The decision follows ongoing monitoring of 69 municipalities who were found not to be compliant with municipal finance laws. Treasury says the release does not mean these municipalities have fully addressed their financial issues. They're still required to comply with the requirements of the Municipal Finance Management Act. And at the Khampepe Commission into TRC cases, Terresa Sindane says she was never part of meetings where ministers and National Director of Public Prosecutions discussed specific cases. The former Justice Department DG maintains she had no mandate over prosecutions and would not have been involved in discussions on TRC-related cases. Onto the world of sports now, and it wasn't the start Banyana and their fans would have hoped for, suffering a shock 2-1 loss to Tanzania in their opening women's AFCON campaign. It now puts pressure on the team going into their next group fixtures against Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso. Coach Desiree Ellis says she and her players were very disappointed in their opening performance.
I always said it was going to be a difficult game, but I also said how important this opening match is. Otherwise, you're chasing in the group. In the first half, we were a bit slow in our tempo. Also, very little options, going forward. I think then we had a turnover in the midfield. They scored and we equalised, going in 1-1. I thought the second half performance was much better. We created a lot of opportunities, created a lot of chances, but the way we conceded was really poor. If we had more composure in front of goal, we'd be speaking different, but it was not a great performance, not a great result, and we know we are better than that. And
Orlando Pirates players completed a clean sweep of individual honours at the 2025-26 Premier Soccer League Awards. Relebohile Mofokeng, who has since joined Belgian side Royal Union Saint-Gilloise, starred, winning Players Player of the Season, the Footballer of the Season, as well as the Young Player of the Season. Now imagine saying farewell to a legend like Didier Deschamps, who has won the World Cup both as player and coach, and then welcoming Zinedine Zidane as his successor. Well, that's what France has just done. Deschamps handed over the reins as national coach after 14 years at the helm to a man considered a footballing icon as a player who delivered France's first World Cup title on home soil back in 1998. He also coached Real Madrid to 3 successive Champions League titles. It's been the worst kept secret for a while, but the French made it official today. On to rugby, and All Blacks coach Dave Rennie has unveiled his 44-man squad for the long-awaited Greatest Rivalry Tour of South Africa. He's confirmed captain Adi Sevilla's extended break. The flanker will miss the franchise matches in the upcoming tour and will arrive only in time for the opening test against the Springboks. Rennie explained that Sevilla needed the break because he had been playing non-stop since January of last year. Cody Taylor has been named stand-in captain.
Yeah, Cody Taylor will be the tour captain. He's obviously now injured as well. He certainly won't play in the first couple of games, Cody, but he's got a huge amount of respect within this group. And the plan was always Cody would have only played one of those 3 games prior to the first test. And so we've got a variety of leaders who we think can do the job on the day. I think a tour captain will deal with a hell of a lot of media and scrutiny while we're over there. It's not just the 80 minutes on game day. So good chance to grow others, but got a really high opinion of Cody. Boys love him and respect him, and I think he'll be valuable for us over there.
And that's how we wrap today's News Bite. For developments in these and more, keep an eye on eNCA.com and DSTV channel 403.